It's that time of the month again where we prepare for the next month, April, by breaking down the monthly statistics. And also we're going to be combining that with a potential major signal that would essentially indicate that Bitcoin cycle is done. A crash is going to only get worse to the downside. And it's all for naught. Just give up all hope. But until we get that signal, there is still hopium for Bitcoin actually having a pretty nice April. Anyways, before we get into it, I should let you know that the 20% off sale that we had for our 7th year anniversary is now done. It's kaput. It's finished. Now we look towards the 8-year anniversary, but we actually are going to be keeping open, at least for now, the free 30-day trial with the code trial in all capitals, by the way. For the Quant Prime AI, for Caretaker's Indicator Bundle, and even the VMP and the Quantum Wavebands as well, which you can try for free for the first 30 days and see if it's relevant to your preferences or not. Anyways, we'll jump into first the biggest, baddest, most important signal of them all, and that is, of course, the moon signal. The moon signal has done it yet again, finding the last lower high in this current downtrend, and, well, there you go. That's the analysis. That's it. No, kidding, of course, but, you know, it is quite silly here, but it does provide a bit of a sort of idea of how long this current downside move will last, at least in the short term, because these phases typically last 14 days, and we're already about 4 days into this current signal. So I would say anywhere between about 7 days to 10 days out from now, you know, is a time to be more on the cautious side. Not necessarily saying that things have to come to the downside, but if they are, that would be the time frame to do it in. Anyways, moving on from there, I want to get into the real topic of today. So first, we're going to break down April monthly statistics. We're going to go through average returns, win rate, going to go over the dates, going to go over what's the other thing? Yes, the open to low data, and then we'll combine that with the potential mega nasty down signal that could potentially occur in April. We'll also go over, you know, what the heaven signal would look like as well. But first things first, let's go here to our lovely my spreadsheets and let's reference the data. So out of 14 total Aprils in Bitcoin's history, 9 of them have closed positively, giving it a just over 64.25% probability to close positively. So a little bit weighted towards positive closures, I suppose. It should be known, however, that out of the last 4 Aprils, 3 of those were negative, just for what it's worth. I do put more weight on more recent data than past data, especially, you know, prior to like 2017, I would say. But anyways, when we break down the average loss and average win return, I think that things are very interesting here because we're seeing something that we haven't seen on any other month, at least that I can recall. For the average loss return, we actually see a relatively low number at 10%. To put that in perspective, if Bitcoin were to go down 10% from here, so we're going to assume that the closure later tonight happens like $82,000, 10% would put Bitcoin on new lows, very important, but it would still be around about $73,000. So fair enough. If, on the other hand, Bitcoin does go closer to the towards the average win returns, well, that is actually 20%. So, you know, if Bitcoin were to trade up, if Bitcoin were to trade up 20%, I mean, that would look pretty fucking good, right? That would put Bitcoin back at around 98 to 99,000 bucks. More importantly, Bitcoin would be taking out the March highs, and that would be my signal to be blindly fucking bullish and just look up. But until that happens, you know, risk is to the downside, obviously. On top of that, we can go over the Bitcoin April low data here, and this is where I want to start to bring into the conversation, you know, what a crash signal would kind of look like. So first things first, Bitcoin April lows, we typically expect them early on within the month. For positive closing Aprils, we typically expect them early on within the month. That does imply that if we see the low in April, meaning that if Bitcoin is making a new low after, especially like the first week of April, it's probably going to be a negative closing month. And we can see that in general, when April is a negative closing month, the lows happen very late within the month, even later than what we've seen on any other month that I can recall as well. In fact, the past 2 were happening on the last day of April, in fact. So yeah, on top of that, yes. Okay, yes. So the first portion of the signal is that if you see Bitcoin making new lows in April compared to the open of April, by about the end of the first week, the end of the first 7 days, probability is going to really start to weigh in favor of a negative April, which is significant here because when we reference this is not March, this is April, bastard, didn't update that, my apologies. But when we reference the open to low data right here, I think that becomes very, very concerning. So on average, when we remove outliers for positive closing Aprils, the open to low was actually very, very shallow. It was very, very small, with most of these results, or pretty much all of these results, being less than 10%. In fact, the highest one was 7%, with many of them much, much lower than that. So on average, 3.5%. Well, what would that look like, assuming Bitcoin, again, closes somewhere here? If Bitcoin closes somewhere here, 3.5% to the downside would put Bitcoin at about $79,000. That would be okay. That is acceptable. And that's about as far as I'd really be expecting Bitcoin to come down if it is going to be bullish, like 78 to 79,000 bucks. The second that Bitcoin comes back down below the March lows, bad things are going to happen, as as we'll go over in a moment. But on the other side, the negative closing side for April, the average negative, the average difference between the open and the low of the month, not the open and the close, but the open and the low of the month, is closer to 20%. It's actually 18.5%. Which I thought was very, very interesting. So when we go into it here, if Bitcoin were to even just trade, just trade below March's low, I mean, that's going to look pretty fucking bad. But your 18.5% puts Bitcoin at about mid 60s or $66,000, which is significant because, again, that would be bringing it down below the March lows. And the reason why that is significant, and the reason why that is essentially an end of cycle signal in the way that I look at things, is because that would confirm that the quarterly has put in a local high. And if that is indeed a local high, then we can compare the quarterly RSI, and you'd see 1, 2, 3 drives of bearish divergence coming off of this last high here, rejected right around the 73.5 level on the quarterly RSI. So you'd have bearish divergence there. Your general target for that is going to be somewhere around the 21 exponential moving average. That is going to be moving up, obviously. It's going to be moving up probably around like $5,000. So maybe it's somewhere around $50,000 if that were to happen, or coming into the next quarter. But again, if Bitcoin comes down below this quarter's low, that's a real potential. Yes, do want to see things on a closing basis, but I do think that putting 2 and 2 together, even just coming down below the March lows, especially closing like a daily below the March lows, I do think that things are much more likely to continue on to the downside. On top of that, we obviously have bearish divergence on the monthly RSI. We've gone over this a million times though. So let's move on over here and get into stochastic momentum, because there's several things to be aware of with this as well. So first things first, coming into the end of this month, we can see that monthly stochastic momentum is going to continue, if we can load it up, is going to continue to the downside, losing the critical zone for the first time in more than a year, actually. When it reclaimed the critical zone here, that was December 2023. So that's not a good sign, by the way. On top of that, it will continue down as long as Bitcoin's closing today, this month, below almost $2,000, like $102,000, a big fucking number right there. Don't think that's going to be, I don't think Bitcoin's going to close above there by tonight, just personal opinion. But yeah, moving on from there, the quarterly stochastic oscillator has also been very interesting to be looking at. This one, as of right now, is higher than what we've ever seen in the past for Bitcoin. And we can see that of the past 2 cycles, when this actually had a little bit of data to complete itself, well, the stochastic cross the downside has essentially marked these cycle highs. So obviously this one's not going to be closing down, or I think it's very unlikely to be closing below the momentum pivot of 60,500 by the end of today. But coming into the next quarter, I imagine that this pivot, it's only going to move up from here. So that does imply that if Bitcoin starts to come back down, I would imagine it moves up to like $70,000. If it comes down below 70, then you're gonna have that cross as well. And then also we have to anticipate the bi-monthly here too, because the bi-monthly has actually called the past 3 market cycle tops extremely well. Whenever we see across the downside, you can see in 2014 got the high, in 2017 got the high, in 2021 got around the high, but in hindsight, anywhere around this region was a pretty damn good do for the long term. Getting out, that is. And as of right now, we're going to be seeing this cross to the downside. Now, again, this does not close tonight. This closes at the end of April. That's why I'm bringing all of this April data into the mix as well. But as it stands right now, it will officially cross the downside if Bitcoin's below 91,000 bucks by the end of April. And that, I mean, it's just like, how many more signals do you want? Well, that's for you to decide, I guess. But for me, that would be enough. You'd have quarterly bearish divergence, monthly bearish divergence, all higher term time frame momentum turning down. Even the bi-weekly, which by the way, just closed last night, is also going to be headed down here, continuing maybe even below the same levels that we've seen throughout this whole cycle, going back to 2023, in fact. And that will happen if Bitcoin is below 101,500 in the next 2 weeks. The weekly, same shit as well, except lower pivot. That would be 91,750, or yes, lower. Yes. 10-day also closing tonight, by the way, is going to continue down as long as Bitcoin's below 103. 5-day also coming down, much lower pivot here. So maybe there's a little bit of hopium there at 86,750. But yeah, you know, if I wanted to wrap up this video as succinctly as possible, I'd say, hey, as long as Bitcoin is above the March lows, especially on a closing basis, there is still hopium. The hash ribbons can still play out, and you know that's what it probably look like. Like Bitcoin comes down probably below 80,000, but doesn't really close lower than the March lows on at least a daily, and especially a higher term time frame than compared to that. Now, on the other side, if Bitcoin is, if the crypto cycle is basically not done and Bitcoin is indeed bullish and we're going to see 100,000 plus very fucking soon, what we would expect at minimum is for Bitcoin to reclaim the last lower high at 88,500 bucks. If Bitcoin can trade above there, for me personally, that's going to be enough to anticipate a likely positive closing April, and thus all of those stats will apply to the upside. And well, the relevance of that is that that would actually reverse the trend and confirm it, and would force all higher term time frame momentum oscillators back onto the upside. So that would be the first area that I'd be aware of. If you want to go buy the book, if you want to be super conservative, you could use, or you would use, the $92,800 high here from the March 6th local high as a nice pivot. But you know, if you recall back from a lot of the momentum oscillator pivots, they are around that region. So you know, reclaiming these levels wouldn't just flip around trend; it would also flip around momentum. That's typically a very powerful combination. But for right now, you know, probabilities are on the downside, especially in these next 7 to 10 days, and we'll see how this one goes on. The message of the day is, see Bitcoin making new lows, especially after the first week. Like, probably not a good signal, I'll put it that way. At least for the bulls. For the bears, yeah, it's a fucking great signal, right? I guess, should I talk about downside targets if it does happen? It's not going to happen all in like one day, but you know, Bitcoin probably comes down to like 50,000-60,000 bucks. Anyways, one last thing that I'll leave you off on over here is the monthly HPDR. This one's still more on the bearish side just because it is below the median, and this month of March was rejected right at the median, by the way, as well. As long as Bitcoin's below there, yeah, there's pressure to the downside. There is a realistic concern of coming down at least to the 38.2 level right here, and that is low 60s, and that would correlate really well with the negative data for April if it does happen. Again, all hinges for me, at least, on Bitcoin's ability to close below the March lows. If that happens, well, you already fucking know. Anyways, I think that's a good place for me to be leaving off. I actually literally just recorded this video, but I didn't record it. I didn't hit record. So I'm recording this one for the second time now. So hopefully this one gets out properly, and I will see you in the next one. Tomorrow is going to be a nice little live stream day. Maybe not so nice. We'll see. And I'll leave it off on that note. As always, wish you the best. Take care. Much love, and see you hopefully Tuesday.